Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Fanatic, and today we're taking a look at Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, a space opera Metroidvania by Respawn Entertainment. Before I go further, I do feel it is only fair to warn you that while I am a fan of classic Star Wars, I do not enjoy the new continuity. I can sum up my thoughts on the reboot trilogy with a single clip.
Every word of what you just said was wrong.
However, I've always believed that one piece of media should never affect one's opinion of another piece of media. This is a review of Fallen Order, not of any of the new films. I'm a fan of Avatar, but that certainly didn't stop me from digging into last week's game to reveal its faults. On the other side of the coin, even though I was never a fan of Dragon Ball, I did enjoy playing the Budokai games with friends. As always, I will attempt to set aside my personal biases and do the best I can to give a fair and honest review.
I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
In Jedi Fallen Order, you'll take on the role of Cal Kestis, former Padawan that escaped during the rise of the Empire as a boy. Although the trauma of the fall of the Jedi made him forget much of his training, throughout the game he'll slowly recover his abilities as well as learn new ones. In typical Metroidvania fashion, new abilities will allow him to explore much more of the world around him as he becomes capable of feats of superhuman agility, as well as regains the ability to telekinetically manipulate objects and enemies alike. Along with the help of a droid known as BD-1, who will likewise gain various upgrades along the way to help him in his journey, Cal explores a handful of different worlds, returning to each as both the story calls for it and his abilities allow him to find more of what's hidden. As is typical of the genre, there are all sorts of hidden goodies throughout the worlds that Cal will visit, many of which are inaccessible on your first trip. Many of these are cosmetics that will simply change the look of his clothes, BD-1's paint job, or that of the ship you'll be using to get from planet to planet, the Mantis. Along the way, you'll also be able to find parts to customize your lightsaber. Again, most of these are merely cosmetic. However, as the game progresses, you will find a couple of upgrades that enhance your abilities. More elegant weapon for a more civilized age. Like many action-adventure games these days, Cal's movements owe heavily to the Prince of Persia: Sands of Time and its sequels. You can clearly see in the way he can briefly run along walls, climbs ledges, and performs parkour-like acrobatics that allow him to climb to places that seem almost impossible to reach. Except for that one segment where the game briefly turns into Sonic Adventure 2. Tell me I'm wrong. In addition to being able to use the Force to manipulate your environment, you'll also enlist the help of BD-1 to get around, as he can form a zip line for Cal to ride down, hack doors, and even offers hints once in a while if you need them. Don't worry, he's not nearly as incessant as Nava. Aside from exploration, the other major part of the game is combat. Although lightsaber combat isn't as robust as the likes of Jedi Academy, and the Force powers aren't nearly as varied as the Force Unleashed, you'll still have plenty of options that you can do with each, being able to combine them to take on foes in various ways. In addition to the numerous forms of slashes that you can use to attack, you'll also be able to block melee attacks and deflect blaster bolts. Cal has a stamina meter that limits how long he can block before his stance shatters, so you can't remain solely on the defensive. If you block a laser blast just before it hits you, you'll redirect it back to the shooter, while getting the timing just right on a melee attack will stagger a foe so that you can hit them with a counterattack. Or against stronger enemies, may simply reduce their defensive stamina by a large margin. You will of course be fighting various types of stormtroopers, but depending on the planet, you'll also have to deal with different kinds of wildlife. As you fight enemies, you'll gain experience. When you level up, you can go to any save point to spend skill points. In the early game, you're fairly limited in what you're able to buy, but as Cal restores his connection to the Force, he'll unlock more and more abilities that you can purchase. Early skills only cost a single point, but late game ones can cost up to 3 for a single skill. These include new moves, enhancing existing ones, upgrades to your health, and more. You have to be careful though. If you fall in battle, you'll lose your collected XP. You won't lose any skill points, but you will lose your progress towards the next one. After respawning, if you attack the foe that killed you, you'll instantly be healed and regain your lost experience. I really don't like these kind of respawn systems in Metroidvanias, but to be fair, it's a lot more lenient than most variants of it that I've seen. Aside from this method, there's really only 2 main ways to heal. Enemies do not drop health pickups of any kind, you don't automatically recover health outside of battle. Rather, the first option is to use BD-1's supply of medical sims. These can be used at any time, even in battle, but you will be vulnerable for a few moments if you try and use it during a fight, so you have to time them carefully. They're limited in supply, and if you run out, your only other option is to head to a save point. If Cal meditates there, he'll fully recover his health and BD1 will replenish any stims you may have used. In addition, any non-boss enemies that you've defeated will respawn. Along the way, you'll have a handful of boss fights. Some against massive beasts, others against bounty hunters, and of course, even a few lightsaber duels. Said duels are, unsurprisingly, the best of the lot, with most of the others being tweaked versions of normal enemies. The game is moderately long. I played on Jedi Master, the third of 4 difficulties, and died fairly often, though there's enough respawn points that it rarely took me long to get back to where I was. The game was challenging, but fair. It had a good difficulty curve, although the final boss did feel like a major jump from the previous fights. Difficulty does more than just changing how much health enemies have. The biggest difference is probably the fact that the timing for parries and deflections becomes far stricter as you bump up the difficulty. Onto the subject of presentation, the game is absolutely gorgeous. Landscapes are wonderfully detailed. From the lakes of Zepho, to the majestic jungles of Kashyyyk, to the frozen landscape of Ilum, there's a lot of detail put into the game's environments and their backgrounds. The characters look quite impressive too, with the humans modeled after the voice actors that play them. They especially do a great job with the major characters, with their skin and hair looking especially realistic. I've long believed that we've passed the point where FMVs are useful, and this game really shows it, as everything is rendered in the in-game engine. And keep in mind, I'm not even running things at max settings. That is one thing I do have to criticize. The game is very adverse to proper loading screens. If you aren't running the game from a solid state drive, you will notice some hiccups when it's trying to load things in. And there were even a few times where it messed up the audio sync on the cutscenes. As for the music, I definitely hear some of the classic John Williams pieces, but there's other stuff that I don't recognize. I'm not sure if it's unique to the game or from the newer films. Finally, we have the story. As aforementioned, you take on the role of Cal Kestis, a survivor of Order 66 that escaped as a young Padawan, hiding away his fallen master's lightsaber for 5 years. During that time, he hid himself away on a junkyard world named Bracca, working as a scrapper that salvaged old ships. When a workplace accident threatens to kill Prof, one of his co-workers, Cal instinctively reaches out with the Force to save him. But no good deed goes unpunished, and it's not long before his presence is brought to the attention of the Imperial Inquisitors. I'm not going to dwell on it too long, but I really don't like the new Inquisitor designs. Maybe I'm just biased because Jedi Knight was my first introduction to the expanded universe? I don't know, but something about their design just feels more Spaceballs than Star Wars to me. Nevertheless, Prof tries to stall them with a speech, but the second sister kills him, prompting Cal to ignite his lightsaber and attack. He's no match for the Inquisitors, who promptly toss him off a cliff. He lands on a hover train, and thus a chase sequence begins as the pair of Inquisitors try to catch up with him, taking to the skies in a starfighter. Just as it seems like he's about to be blown away, another ship intervenes, with a woman telling Cal to keep going and they'll get him out of there. Eventually, the second sister does catch up to Cal, forcing him into a duel where he's hopelessly outmatched. Just as it looks as though she's about to kill him, the mysterious vessel from earlier returns, with the woman distracting the Inquisitor just long enough for Cal to board the ship and escape. Once they jump into hyperspace, they're safe for the time being. The woman introduces herself as Seer, and the ship's pilot as Grease. Seer is a former Jedi that wants Cal's help to rebuild the Jedi Order, and one who knew Cal's master, no less. We also learn that Cal is able to sense echoes in the Force. By touching an object, he can see the memories of those who once held it. The pair bring him to Bogano, a verdant planet with alien ruins. She directs him to a vault which can only be opened by Jedi. As Seer has severed her connection to the Force, she's unable to enter, but she tells him that the secret to restoring the Order lies within. Before long into his explorations, he comes across a damaged droid named BD-1, fixing it up and exploring the planet alongside the small robot. Admittedly, this is a non sequitur, but does his appearance remind anyone else of Rob, especially with the original Famicom colors? Regardless, the droid soon proves to be a capable companion, helping Cal traverse the landscape, providing medical stims when he's injured, and slicing into machines when necessary. Not long thereafter, once coming to what seems to be a dead end, Cal has a flashback, remembering his time as a Padawan and restoring part of his training, allowing him to run along walls for short periods of time. This allows him to traverse the terrain, eventually getting him and BD-1 into the vault. Once there, the droid plays a hologram of his former owner, Eno Cordova. As a Jedi Master, Cordova built BD-1 and hid away a Jedi holocron within the vault. Those not familiar with such, just imagine a holocron as a data disk that only those trained in the Force can open. Upon the holocron is encoded the names of numerous Force-sensitive children across the galaxy, those that were intended to be the next generation of Jedi. but in order to open the inner vault, Cal must travel the galaxy and retrace Cordova's footsteps, with more of BD-1's records being slowly unlocked to show him the way. Cal returns to the Mantis, where Cere explains that she was Cordova's student. The trio then set course for Zepho, the homeworld of the extinct alien race that built the vault, where Cal will find the first of 3 ancient tombs he must enter. And now that we have the bare bones of the plot out of the way, we come to the part of the review where we'll be discussing some of the game's twists and turns. If you wish to avoid spoilers, please jump ahead to the time coordinates indicated on screen. Initiate temporal distortion now. Still with me? Then don't say I didn't warn you. At this point, you have the option of traveling to Dathomir, but aside from introducing some characters that won't be important until later in the game and getting the double blade upgrade for your lightsaber, there's not much you can actually do here yet. Nothing that really affects the story anyways, so I'll just be slotting that part in later. To continue the main plot, the player must head to Zepho. The Empire has taken hold of the world, though their presence is thankfully only a small detachment meant to hold down the fort. After finding their way through the first tomb, and with Cal having another flashback to restore his ability to use the Force to push objects, BD-1 displays another recording of Cordova, explaining that the wood found within the tomb comes from Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld. He further explains that the next step in his journey was to seek out Tarful, a Wookiee chieftain. If you've seen the films, you've actually seen this character before, even if you're not familiar with the name. He was the one with Chewie when they saw off Yoda. Regardless, that sets our crew to their next destination, but not before Cal and Cere talk, and she begins to open up a bit about her past. As a Jedi Knight, Cere and her Padawan Trilla escaped Order 66, taking a group of younglings into hiding with them. Eventually, the Empire did catch up with them. Cere tried to use herself as bait to lure them away, but she was eventually captured and tortured, the Empire wanting information she had not only on Trilla, but also on Cordova's findings as a Jedi archaeologist. Obviously, she eventually managed to escape, but Trilla was not so lucky. Upon reaching Kashyyyk, they arrive just as a group of insurgents are attempting to take an Imperial landing pad. Taking advantage of the chaos, Cal infiltrates and captures a prototype AT-AT, using it to turn the tables on the Imperials and bring their own firepower to bear against them. Once the landing pad is secure, the insurgent leader introduces himself as Saw Gerrera. We never really get to know why, but Cere seems to know him, or at least know of him, as she warns Cal to be careful around the man. Nevertheless, Tarful is nowhere to be found, leading his own separate group against the Imperials on the planet's surface. However, Saw plans to attack an Imperial prison where they've captured numerous Wookiees to press into slavery. Their goals align for now, so Cal helps them attack the facility, not only freeing the Wookiees, but also setting the facility itself back a fair bit. Among the numbers of those freed is Choisik, a Wookiee commander that promises to do what he can to let Tarful know of the young Jedi. There's not more that Cal and the others can do on Kashyyyk until Tarful is located, so for the time being they return to Zepho, where the Imperials have begun to take interest in a second tomb that was activated after Cal explored the first. Before long, Cal encounters the second sister once again, serving as his first test of lightsaber skills. He's still no match for her in combat, but luckily for him, BD intervenes and hacks the laser barrier, stopping her from delivering the finishing blow. So then she reveals her true identity, removing her helmet and letting him know that she's Trilla. She tries to get under his skin and sow discord between the group, claiming that Cere surrendered her location under torture in an effort to save herself. To Cal's credit, the first thing he does thereafter is attempt to contact Cere to ask her side of the story. Unfortunately, Trilla has hacked their communications and uses the comlink to continue to whisper temptations into his ear. Still, he manages to push through, continuing to have visions of his past, relearning how to pull objects to himself with the Force, and eventually retracing Cordova's steps to find that the key to opening the vault on Bogano is an ancient device known as an astrium. He's managed to escape Trilla for now, but as Cal makes his way back to the Mantis, he's attacked by a bounty hunter, knocked unconscious, and soon finds himself waking up inside of a prison. Cal finds himself in an arena owned by the Haxian Brood, a group of thugs that Grease owes a sizable gambling debt to, and decided to take Cal as collateral. He fights his way through waves of creatures and eventually the bounty hunter that captured him. And just when it seems like the fight will never end, the Mantis swoops in and quite literally crashes the party, allowing him to escape. Cal is thankful for the rescue, but at the same time is still very distrustful of Cere after Trilla's words, so he confronts her directly about it. She evades the question, but before Cal can press her on the issue, they receive a communication from Kashyyyk, indicating that Tarful has been located and is willing to meet with him if he can get back there quickly. Cal drops the subject for now, but Grease goes to have a chat with him, pleading that he forgives Cere for keeping secrets from them. And I must say, I really enjoy the character development arcs we get. This here is a major turning point for Grease, who starts off as pretty much always being a jerk, but you slowly see him come around to truly be concerned about Cal and Cere, and this scene really drives that point home quite well. Nevertheless, the group still has their mission to attend to, so they return to Kashyyyk, descending to the Shadowlands where the Wookiee chieftain is waiting for him. Tarful tells Cal to ascend the Origin Tree, the largest floor on the planet, where Cordova himself once ascended to the top. Once there, the next recording shows that Cordova found an astrium there, but also knew of another on Dathomir that he was never able to locate, giving Cal his next destination. But before he can return to the Mantis, the Ninth Sister attacks him, forcing him into another boss fight. This time, he's ready, taking on the lower-ranked Inquisitor, at least I think that's how their numbers work, and manages to drive her back. Upon returning to the Mantis, the trio have a meal together, and Cere decides to come clean, admitting that what Trillis said was true. She did indeed crack under torture and gave up Trilla's location. Cal forgives her, and they press on with their journey, heading into the swamp world of Dathomir, where he encounters the last of the Night Sisters.
Wait a minute, is that actually a thing in Disney canon? Are the Night Sisters almost extinct?
Regardless, she doesn't take too kindly to his presence, calling guards to attack him. Nonetheless, he presses on and comes to a man that for now is known simply as the Wanderer, and yeah, they don't even try to hide it, he's a bad guy. Cal presses forward as best he can and runs into the Night Sister once again, who attacks him with the corpses of her fallen sisters. I know this isn't a new thing, but zombies have always felt out of place to me whenever they're used in Star Wars. It just doesn't mesh with the setting at all. Regardless, he continues to push forward, eventually finding his way to the final Zepho ruin. Unable to open the door, Cal meditates and finds himself lost in memories once again, this one longer and more vivid than any before it. He recounts Order 66 going off and he and his master tried to escape the traitorous clones, anger and confusion overwhelming him as he tried to make it to the escape pods. Paul makes it to the pods with him and sets the ship to overload and explode, but not without being grievously wounded himself. And to make this memory even worse, it transitions into a new nightmare, with Cal imagining his master blaming him for his death. When he wakes, he sees that in his turmoil, he's crushed his master's lightsaber, rendering it inoperable. With no weapon to defend himself, Cal makes his way back toward the Mantis, only to be stopped by the Wanderer from earlier, who identifies himself as Terran Malkos, a fallen Jedi that now uses his power to manipulate the Night Brothers and the last Night Sister, who we also learn is named Marin. Betrayed by Terran, Marin calls another horde of zombies to attack, and Cal has to do his best to escape them while defenseless. Once back on the Mantis, with Cal feeling hopeless and defeated, Cere continues her confession from earlier, finally telling him the rest of the story. After she gave up Trilla's location, they forced her to watch as she took up the mantle of the Second Sister. In her rage, Cere lashed out with the dark side of the Force, which is why after her escape she cut herself off entirely. I don't have the time to give this scene the full weight it deserves, but it does a really good job with its "we all make mistakes" speech. First things first though, it's time for Cal to construct his own lightsaber, so Cere leads him to Ilum to find a crystal and gives him her lightsaber to defend himself for the time being. He makes his way through the icy caverns, nearly frozen to death as he finally takes the crystal into his hands, only for it to shatter. Just as he's about to give up, BD-1 plays one last message from Cordova, recorded just as the Jedi Master was preparing to die after Order 66, giving some final words of encouragement both to BD-1 and whomever would find the droid, promising them that failure is not the end. Emboldened, Cal takes the two shards along with both the parts from T'Pol and Cere's lightsabers to create his own, or rather, a pair of them that can be detached to make swift, powerful flurries of blows. With his own lightsaber constructed and his past abilities fully remembered, there's only one final part of Cal's training he must confront: the Trial of the Spirit. Is it still called that in Disney canon? Nevertheless, he confronts the nightmare of his fallen master once more, making peace with the past and pressing on to confront the former Jedi that was broken by it. Terran stands between him and the final tomb, giving him the typical "join me or die" speech. He proves to be too much for Cal to battle alone, but seeing his selflessness, Marin joins in and aids Cal, the two working together, with the Night Sister literally burying him alive. Cal finds the remaining astrium within the bowels of the tomb, but he doesn't return to the Mantis alone. Knowing what it's like to be among the last of a group targeted for genocide, Marin decides to join Cal for the final leg of his journey. As she becomes a part of their group and privy to their plans, Marin brings up an important point that I'm sure many of you have already realized. If they try to train new Jedi, won't the Empire just hunt them down before their training's complete? With the astrium finally in hand, Cal returns to Bogano one last time to open the vault. Finally, the holocron is his, and with it, Cal has a vision of the future, of him training a new generation of Jedi, and of being hunted down, just as Marin warned. of his students being gunned down and himself being captured, tortured, and eventually breaking down and becoming an Inquisitor himself. When he comes back to the present, Trilla is there, ready to confront him and take the holocron. They battle, and he manages to take her lightsaber, but in the confusion, Trilla grabs the holocron and makes her escape. With the lightsaber in hand, he sees another specter of the past, not his own, but Trilla's, watching through her eyes as she's tortured and becomes an Inquisitor. When he comes to, stormtroopers have surrounded the vault, but he manages to break through, getting back to the Mantis and telling the others what happened. Knowing exactly where Trilla will head, Cere gives them the coordinates for the Fortress Inquisitorius. Before they get there though, there's one last thing Cere decides to do. Taking Trilla's lightsaber into her hands, she has to improvise a little, but she knights Cal, officially dubbing him a Jedi Knight.
By the right of the Council, by the will of the Force, Cal Kestis.
Doubly I do, Jedi. Knight of the Republic.
From there, Cal and Cere both infiltrate the Citadel, each entering from different points to search for the holocron, with Cere using the lightsaber that he took from Trilla. It's a long, uphill battle as they fight through numerous enemies, but eventually, Cal comes to the interrogation chamber, where Trilla is waiting for him, initiating one last fight. It's a fierce battle as he's finally able to match the Inquisitor, trading blow after blow with her until finally, at last he manages to disarm Trilla and take the holocron from her. Cere arrives, pleading with Trilla to leave the darkness behind her, but interrupting their reunion is none other than Vader himself. The Dark Lord quickly kills Trilla. Cere tries to move in to distract him so Cal can get away, but he simply tosses her over the ledge. Cal knows he can't hope to match the Sith, so he attempts to run away as Vader effectively turns the entire structure into a weapon against him, forcing him to make his way to a turbo lift. Just as Cal thinks he's in the clear, Vader is already waiting for him in the hallway. He does his best to defend himself, and BD-1 even helps out, but it's not enough. Just when it seems all is about to be lost, Cere shows up again. Together, the three of them are able to distract Vader by shattering one of the Citadel's windows, letting water flood into the structure and swimming out to escape. Cal gives his rebreather to Cere, who's now unconscious, but he can't make it to the surface in time. Just as he's passing out, he sees Merrin coming to rescue them. When he wakes, they've made their escape. They have the holocron, and it has all the data they'd hoped for, a list of countless Force-sensitive children. Realizing that Merrin was right, they decide not to use this information, Cal destroying the holocron and ensuring the Empire will never be able to use it for themselves.
Welcome back, Chrononauts. You're just in time to join us for the conclusion. Star Wars Jedi Order is a fairly large game. It took me about 18 hours to complete, and if I wasn't planning to do it as a review, I most certainly would have taken a good while longer, taking more time to find all those hidden items and goodies. And I will most certainly be returning to the game to find more of them, as Metroidvanias are wont to make me want to do. It looks great, it plays great, and the writing is great. There's a good balance of both combat and exploration. Landscapes are both varied and interesting, and there's a good mixture of enemies in the game. I do wish that a game this long had more boss fights, but those that are there are quite well done. Characters are interesting and dynamic, with Cal, Cere, and Grease all having a great deal of development over the course of the game. And while the game's big plot twist is a little predictable, it does fit quite naturally into the story. Does this mean that I'm going to start getting into the new canon as a whole? No, not at all. However, I will be looking forward to this game's sequel with anticipation. In conclusion, I find Jedi Fallen Order to be worthy of an admirable 9.5 out of 10. Fallen Order is available digitally for PC via Origin or Steam, as well as available both physically and digitally for Xbox and PlayStation. If you're interested in purchasing or learning more, links are included in the description. But what about you? What do you think of Fallen Order? What games do you enjoy from series you otherwise don't? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And please remember to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you really enjoy my work, consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.